Live from the recording studios in St. Paul, Minnesota, it's time for Museum Studies. We're going to have fun today because we're going to talk about modern art museums. Who doesn't like modern art museums? I think there's nobody that's at the Arts High School that would not like that. Anyways, okay, so we're first going to start with what are the four most important modern art museums in the US of A? And here they are, according to me. All right, so first has got to be MoMA, Museum of Modern Art, in Manhattan, New York City. They've had 3 editions over the last, I think, 10 to 15 years. Finally, I think they're done with their added-on architecture. It's the big one. It's where it all started. And let's define modern art. I would say Impressionism to the 1960s. Past the 1960s, contemporary art, although, the arrow is moving, right, with time. Maybe it's more like, I'm going to stay with 1960s. All right, I've been there a couple of times. It is most famous for its first curator, Alfred Barr, coming up with a way to explain modern art in linear fashion. One particular art movement begets another art movement begets another art movement. Now, when they just opened their new edition last fall, they really shook it up a lot. They put in more non-Western, more female artists in their major galleries, and everybody applauded such a move. All right, I'm going to be bold here. I'm going to say second is the Walker Art Center. And you have the very brutalistic brick wing on our right. And then on the left, of course, is the not so successful wing that opened up in the aughts. Lots of people call it the Robot Head. It was supposed to bring about a sense of community among Walker patrons, and it just has not panned out that way. And of course, there's all different kinds of discussions about that. Their strength, as my AP students know, their strength is in conceptual art and minimalism. And I have to say, for the last 5 to 7 years, I think they've kind of sort of been less than they could be. They don't particularly have great popular shows go through their galleries, although I think that's changing a little bit with their new director. The Julie Moretu, I think, is going to be awesome. And hopefully we can have some works that don't satisfy necessarily the artistic elite, but that are more populist in their focus. But I think you can take great pride in the fact that we probably have the second best modern contemporary art museum in the United States, in Minneapolis. Okay, and then what you generally find is that San Francisco Modern Art Museum and the Walker usually have some of the same exhibitions, traveling exhibitions that are in their walls. And then I would add on to that the Wexner, which we've talked about before, which is at Ohio State. We're going to see that a little bit later. We talked about that when we talked about art museums on college campuses. So this one just got a new edition as well. And I've been in it. And it is an incredible museum that I think you all should get to at some point in your lives. Although, and I think I've said this to you guys before, but that when I went through the new wing, there was just blue chip after blue chip after blue chip, 7, 8 works from what a lot of people consider the most important artists working today. And it was just sort of an embarrassment of riches. I mean, give some of that to some of the other more, obscure modern art museums in the United States. Why does Why it is? Well, I know why. It's because the people behind the Gap stores collected a lot of art and gave it to the San Fran Modern in the last, I think, 10 years. And they just kept piling them up. So, yeah, make sure you get there. And then last but not least, and this is probably a stretch, and you guys know that I love Washington, D.C., lived there and taught there for 5 years. I would say the Hirshhorn is important. It maybe not in the top 4, I would admit right now. Maybe the top 10. But this is kind of fun. So for a long time, there was a proposal that they would make extra galleries through blown up walls. I don't know what the walls were going to be made out of. And finally, they abandoned it. It's a really ugly museum. It is the Modern Art Museum on the Washington, D.C. Mall. And it's round, much like the Guggenheim. And I've never felt comfortable in there. They do a great job with their exhibitions, no doubt about it. And I really loved particularly the Mark Bradford show on the top level this summer when I was there. And anyways, so Hirshhorn is the last name of a man who gave his collection to the federal government with the stipulation that they would make a museum to hold it. And that's what it is. Okay, so let's keep on, go up north on the East Coast. This is the New Museum of Art. Hold on a second. I gotta pause for a second. Okay, sorry about that. Oops. Darn. Okay, hold on a second. No, play from the current slide. Okay, I had a mind blank for a minute. So the New Museum was founded by Marcia Tucker. She, in one of the documentaries I have, she talks about being fired from the Whitney, basically because she was a woman. So she developed this new museum, and its building is very, very new. I was last in New York City in 2000. I think it opened 2001, 2002. The sign outside says "Hell yes," which I love. I don't think that sign is still there. I think it is talking about another edition as well. And the new museum is kind of out there. I would readily admit that when I look at their exhibitions online, a lot of them I really understand, and I know the majority, well, let's say maybe I know 80% of the artists. And then there's some that are new to me and way out there as far as maybe performance art or conceptual art. And I can't wait to get to New York City in the next 5 years and go to the new museum. It's top of my list. All right, here's the Guggenheim, and if you're familiar with New York City, just a few blocks down or up, I guess it would be up, is the Metropolitan Museum of Art. This is the Guggenheim, this is, of course, one of Frank Lloyd Wright's most famous buildings. It also is round, much like the Hirshhorn, but I think it's just a better building. The Guggenheim, I would say, is pretty deep in Impressionism to 45 and a little bit above, but is not known necessarily as a museum for living artist shows. And although they've had a couple of very interesting ones, I'm not saying that it's not as if they have never done one, but yeah. And I mean, if you're in New York City, you're going to the Met already, you should head down to the Guggenheim, for sure. Okay, now we're sort of going up, we're going north to the Albert Knox Gallery in Buffalo. And believe it or not, I have been there. I have a good friend who lives outside of Buffalo. And I went to see her a couple of years ago. And this is weird because it has this neoclassical exterior, and in fact has some katydids Caryatids, sorry for the mispronunciation, much like on the Acropolis, the Erechtheion building. And then inside is this incredible collection of, I would say, 45 up, particularly abstract expressionism, color field painting, just really, really a lot of depth in those areas. Pretty decent pop art collection. But they need a new building. This is just too incongruent for my taste. Then we're going to go up a little further to Massachusetts, to the ICA Boston. This is another building that I've never been in before. I was last in Boston. It was after Avery was born, so probably about 2002, 2003. It's on the harbor. It's seen as one of the most incredible architectural buildings for modern and contemporary art. And then they have this new annex. It's kind of like a warehouse on the harbor that they have recently created a museum out of, well, a contemporary gallery out of. This is definitely on my bucket list. I would love to go to Boston and see this museum. Not too much of a permanent collection, but really cutting edge art in their galleries. All right, then we're heading to Mass MoCA, which is another fairly, in relative terms, newish museum. It's another one that I've never been to. It is really an interesting story. After they created the museum in these old warehouses, it really it changed economically the town, and it's now a tourist destination. It has one of the largest galleries, or I think it has the largest gallery in the United States. You're looking at it now. They commission artists once a year to fill the whole thing. Some do it better than others. Yeah, it's an incredible place. All right, this is kind of weird. So a lot of people don't know that in Tehran, Iran, there is a museum of contemporary art that has a really great collection of American abstract expressionism, again, color, field, and pop. And I don't remember the whole story behind it, but to me, it's absolutely amazing that it's still in existence and still frequented by Iranians. This is probably the one museum that nobody in the current class is ever going to see, unless, you're wanting to travel to Iran. Okay, we've talked about the Wexner Center before, so we don't have to really talk about too much more. But like I said before, the Wexner and the Walker and the San Fran Moderns seem to have the same exhibitions going through their galleries. There's a real collaboration that goes on between all of them. Okay. Oh, it's at Ohio State. All right, now we're going to Chicago. I think after this class, all of you should take a trip to Chicago in the next couple of years to see the Field Museum, which is one of the best natural history museums in the United States. Go to the Art Institute of Chicago, which is one of the best encyclopedic museums. And now we have the Museum of Contemporary Art in Chicago. I've been there a couple of times. They focus in on a lot of African American contemporary artists, which makes sense because they're it's in Chicago. But they do other exhibitions as well. Their website is awesome, and I go there pretty frequently. And they have great stuff online, and it is worthy of your attention. Okay, now we're going to Southern California. As you know, it's one of my favorite places to go for museums. And we've talked about the Hammer before. The Hammer is part of the University of California, Los Angeles, UCLA. And it's cutting edge stuff. And it's interesting because I think we talked about this before. It has this old master collection, and then it has this huge forward march, so to speak, of trying to support living artists, and they do it very, very well. Okay, so that's that, and then the Museum of Contemporary Art has had a lot of controversy over the last 10 to 15 years. They hired a art dealer who had no experience in a museum, Jeffrey Deitch, and that didn't go very well. And it seems like they're just always it's just like a lot of drama. Hopefully they've got their act together finally. And then weirdly enough, across the street from the Museum of Contemporary Art is the Broad, which is the newest museum in Los Angeles that's still open. There's a big story about a contemporary one that closed before COVID-19. But anyways, this is the Broad, and the Broad there's 3 actual buildings that Eli Broad has funded. One is a brand new museum at Michigan State University where he did his undergrad. 2 is a beautiful building on the campus of the Los Angeles County Museum of Art. And now this one. And there's kind of a funny story. So it's just 4 years old now. And 2 years ago, I was in LA for the holidays. You know, I have in-laws there. And on the left, I went through the doors and I was in the bookstore. And I was talking to this woman at the cash register, and I said, I'm an art historian. I was giving her a sob story. I said, I'm an art history teacher, high school art history teacher from Minnesota, and I know I'm not going to be able to get in because the lines are too long. And she goes, listen, take this card. And then she put her name on it. And she said, get in line, and you'll be able to get into the museum. So I got this text at 3 o'clock that they were closing the line, and I got a cab, and the cab was only like a 5-minute cab drive. And I got in line, and these 2 young people said, oh, I'm sorry, the line is closing right here in front of you. And I said, here, I've got this card. And they said, okay, you're the last person to get in today. And then there was this woman behind me who went crazy because she thought she should be the last person in line. But anyways, I got in, and the Broad collection is massive. Much like San Fran Modern, it's a little bit embarrassing how many blue chip artists, works from blue chip artists they have. But I think they've been doing some interesting exhibitions, one with Shireen Neshet, one of my favorite artists. And every time I'm in LA, I'm going to go to the Broad for sure. Yeah. So, yeah. Would that be the newest modern / contemporary art museum in the United States? Open? Yeah, I think so. Okay, let's keep going. Okay. So this is the Museum of Contemporary Art in not San Diego proper, but you're looking out actually from a window from La Jolla, where one of my brother-in-laws and sister-in-laws live. I don't know if you guys know anything about La Jolla. It's always proclaimed as one of the most beautiful cities in the world, and every right to be claimed for that claim. And this is, I think, the only museum that I know of that has a window out to the ocean. But you can't get into the Museum of Contemporary Art in La Jolla. They have a huge new construction going on for another at least 2 years, I believe. But there's also a Museum of Contemporary Art annex, which is very small, in San Diego proper. And I know all this because, as you know, I spend at least a week in the San Diego area every holiday break because my father-in-law is there and two brother-in-laws. Tough, I know. It's really tough. I'll never forget waking up on Christmas morning, like in 19. It was when was it? 1999, and going out and picking tangerines from my father-in-law's tangerine tree. I was used to cold, bitter wind Christmases and holidays in Nebraska. So yeah, it's an incredible experience to have the holidays in Southern California. Anyways, so here's a little itinerary you could give to yourself. So go to Comic-Con in August, although I think it's going online this year. And, see San Diego, and this is in a couple years, and then, get a bus or a lift to La Jolla, and I think it'll finally be done, and see this incredible museum and look out to the ocean while you're looking at art. Okay, now we're going across the pond. We always like to do that. This is the Tate Modern. Why did all of these contemporary museums open after I've been to these cities? So I was last in London in 1999, and the Tate opened, I think, 2000. And I think we've talked about it. It's in a former powerhouse building. And it's really just it's a huge presence now in the museum world. And I think they're talking about building on as well. You've seen definitely some videos and materials from the Tate channel. And it's a major force. Maybe I should put it in the top 4 and kick out what was I kicking out before? I can't remember. Anyways, so yeah, the Tate Modern. I hope someday you get to London and you can go in and see it. Especially the Turbine Hall. It's huge. I don't think it's as large as Mass MoCA space, but it's very large. Okay, so you're thinking to yourself, okay, I'm in Paris. Where do I go to see modern and contemporary art? And go no further than the Pompidou Center. And it's very unusual. It has a very unusual exterior. It's called Brutalism. It's a little bit of a different Brutalism than at the Walker Art Center. And it's by the most famous and most sought after architect for museums. His name is Renzo Piano. I have to say, when I was there in the spring of 1990, that takes me back, I was a little disappointed. I mean, I don't think they really, they do okay. I think their best Impressionism to 45. They've had a pretty cool Dada show as of late. But if you're like me and I didn't have any money and I was in Paris, skip it and go to Musée d'Orsay, which I wish I would have done. I went to the Louvre and went to Notre Dame. I didn't even see the Eiffel Tower, which is weird, but it's true. I only had enough money for a day. Okay. And then we've talked about, maybe we haven't in museum studies. Well, we've talked about it a little bit. So the Guggenheim in New York decided to expand. And they decided to expand in Bilbao, Spain, which was this Rust Belt Spanish town that had seen better days. And then they hired Frank Gehry, again, the architect for the Weizmann Museum on the campus of the University of Minnesota. And lo and behold, once the museum opened, it became this huge tourist spot. And Bilbao, Spain is now a thriving town. And because of this, I think we've mentioned this before in class, but it bears repeating because this is the museum that did it. Now all museums want to hire what are called starchitects, star architects, very clever name there, and hoping that it'll have what's called the Bilbao effect, and bring more people to their city because art has become kind of, it's really like the cathedrals in Gothic France. People take pilgrimages to see these art museums. And so you can't afford really to hire anybody less than a starchitect. Okay, and then last but not least, and I just added this today, this is the Louisiana, and it's not in the United States, the Louisiana Museum of Modern Art in Denmark. I must admit, I really never had a reason to go to Denmark, but this museum has, I think it's second to the Tate Modern. I think it's one of the best modern art museums in Europe, and maybe even the world. And it looks to me like it looks out to the ocean. I might be wrong on that. But anyways, I thought this was kind of a fun little photograph with a Calder sculpture on the right. There might be some Calder works too in the middle, but I'm not sure. Anyways, so if you happen to find yourself in Denmark at some point, a study abroad in college, get to the Louisiana Art Museum. Okay, that's it for modern art museums and contemporary art museums. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Bye.